We're back in Got today, continuing our conversation with Johnson Wagner and Rex Hoggard. Rex, I want to go back to the weekend. Phil Mickelson tweeted what was a slightly vague threat that LIV players might someday en masse boycott major championships unless those majors create a direct pathway for LIV players. Do you ever see a scenario in which Brooks Koepka or John Rahm's going to sit at home during a major because Talor Gooch or Joaquin Niemann is not getting a start that week?
No, and I don't think Phil Mickelson is the ally that anyone wants in this conversation, to be quite frank with you. Now, the Talor Gooch conversation is a much different issue, and I do think the major championships, when we heard it last month at the Masters, where it's going to be up to the majors to decide which players they want into their fields to make sure they do have, quote-unquote, the best possible fields they can. And I think we saw that this week with the PGA of America, extending invites to members of LIV Golf who probably wouldn't have qualified elsewhere. I think you'll start to see that more and more from the governing bodies, but no, I can't imagine in any universe a Brooks Koepka or a John Rahm or any of the other top players would pass up an opportunity to play in a major championship just to make a point. I don't see that ever happening.
The ludicrousness of these comments coming out of this tour are just ridiculous. And you have guys getting these spots into the PGA Championship and complaining about getting spots into the U.S. Open and Open Championship, yet they're not willing to go to sectional qualifying. I'm baffled. I have no problem with people going to LIV, take your money and go, but to think that you could have it both ways is mind-boggling to me. And some of them need to start drinking some truth serum, because what they're doing right now is just making them look foolish.
Well, you drink a lot of truth serum, Johnson. That's why we love you. What was your reaction to Talor Gooch receiving that exemption in the PGA? A nice enough guy, likes red wine like I do, but I was a bit surprised, I'm not going to lie, when I saw his name chosen for an exemption into the PGA.
Well, I was personally very excited to see Joaquin Niemann get a spot into the Masters. He made an effort to go play in Australia and to go play in other parts of the world. And Talor has played some wonderful golf on the LIV circuit, but he hasn't really made an effort. He didn't go play sectional qualifying at the U.S. Open last year after complaining about not being in the tournament. He said he's not going to go play sectional qualifying this year. I'm a little surprised the PGA gave him a spot, but he's probably deserving. I'm sure he's playing well. We'll see how it goes next week for him. But I'm over the narrative of they're trying to become the victims now, and they're the ones that kind of caused this whole structure of the PGA Tour to break down. So the fact that they want it both ways is just not playing well with me, and it's not going to for a while.
Rex, going back to the Wells Fargo this week, there are a lot of guys in the field who really need a big week before they get to Valhalla next week. One of them is grinding out there on the range right now, Viktor Hovland, who's had, by his standards, a pretty poor year coming off the FedEx Cup win last year. Is he the guy at the top of your list who needs to find something this week before he heads to Kentucky?
Yes, definitely Viktor Hovland would be on the list, but if I had to start, and if I'm being honest, it's going to be Jordan Spieth. I think Johnson Wagner and I were both in Dallas last week, and we watched him play the first 2 rounds, and we actually had a really good conversation on air just about the idea that it's probably time for Jordan to make a decision to go in a different direction. And I'm not talking about a swing coach-wise, I'm talking about the left wrist injury. It's clearly a problem. It's clearly something that's keeping him from playing the golf that he wants to play, the golf that we all know he's capable of playing. Now, I spoke with Jordan about this last week, and he said he's not going to make it worse, he's not going to make it better by playing. The way he explained it to me is he didn't feel like there was a surgical procedure that was going to make it work. But when he talks about the idea that he doesn't know when it's going to quote-unquote pop out, and we're talking about the ligament popping out of the sheath in his wrist, that seems to me terrifying, and I don't know how you can possibly play professional golf with that looming over you, and I think that's what we're seeing out of Jordan Spieth right now. So if we don't see a turnaround, whether it's this week or if it's Valhalla for the PGA Championship, or at least over the next few weeks, I think he has to make a decision about how he's going to treat this particular injury. Maybe taking 6 months off at this point is the best option.
Jordan Spieth, the FedEx Cup champ. Johnson, Viktor Hovland, a FedEx Cup champ. The way he closed last season was something I'll never forget. And to see him on the driving range doing all these funky swing moves when he hit the ball the way he did last year, I'm completely befuddled and confused. You've won 3 times out there. We know this game is tough, but can you take us inside the mind of a player who played as brilliantly as he did and then is breaking it all down and trying to do it a different way?
Yeah, and I'm not going to speculate what happened with him and his coach last year, Joseph Mayo, but they clearly had a phenomenal run from Memphis all the way through the playoffs, coming off the best year of his career. And then I go forward to the Players' Championship, and it was Wednesday afternoon. I was on the back of the range, and he's out there, last guy on the driving range, working with his coach at the time, Grant Waite. He then goes out and plays 4 holes to finish his Wednesday preparation into the gloaming, and then is out early the next day. He's clearly a guy that's searching. I think he's since found another coach to go work for. And from what I understand, Viktor Hovland is just trying to get back to where he has one shot, and that's the fade that he was so good at. And hopefully he gets there soon. But it's confusing why he would want to make the changes he did at the end of a banner year.
And Rex, one of the guys Viktor Hovland went up against last year in the PGA Championship, Brooks Koepka, he won the LIV event in Singapore at the weekend. He's got to be on everybody's list of guys most likely to walk away with the Wanamaker Trophy next week, right? He never ceased being Brooks Koepka based on who was signing the check on whatever tour he was playing on. But it's got to be worrying for some of these other guys when you see Brooks Koepka start to round into some form and some confidence.
Yeah, I think after Scottie Scheffler, and we can all agree he's going to be one on that list, I think Brooks is probably going to be number 2 going into the PGA Championship. And I know that's being a bit of a prisoner of the moment based on what he has done so far this season. But I think the narrative coming out of the Masters, the idea was, well, he can flip the switch. Well, he didn't flip the switch, so maybe this is a different Brooks. Maybe he's not getting the reps he needs. Maybe he's not focused the way he needs to. Now, this reminds me a lot of what happened last year just before the Masters when he won the LIV event in Orlando, and he was clearly in good form when he showed up at Augusta National, and that carried over to the PGA Championship. I would actually be shocked if he doesn't give himself a chance to win at Valhalla.
What do you think, Johnson? Is there some level of admiration or at least appreciation for how Brooks has kept himself sharp and in the fight and focused on what's always been important to him, even if he does now play on a different tour?
It's kind of mind-boggling when you look at his career as a whole that he's got just about as many major wins as he does regular wins. I think when it's all said and done in his career, he's going to go down as somewhat of an enigma that way. He's already got 3 PGA championships. You would have to think, based on the places he's won, that Valhalla would be a good place for him. And clearly, coming off a win's a good thing. And he doesn't need form. I would think Scottie Scheffler and Brooks Koepka are the 2 guys I don't worry about form leading into a major championship at this point.
Should be a great week this week and next week as well. We appreciate the thoughts of Rex and a feisty Johnson Wagner.